Hello, guys. Welcome back to Average Home Theater. This is Nelson, and I'm joined once again by Dominic. How's it going, man?
Where we're going, we don't need roads.
We don't need roads today, baby. We are going to do a deep dive into the Back to the Future series. And tonight we're going to do Back to the Future Part 1. Um, we'll see how it goes, whether or not we do 2 or 3 videos. So as of right now, we were kind of planning on 2, but if it runs a little long, then we'll go ahead and do 3. That sound good, Dominic?
Sounds good. And we have a tendency to run a little long, so
Oh man, we
I'm
get a little
here.
long-winded sometimes, but that's okay. That's okay. So, how did you get introduced to Back to the Future? I really don't remember. I just kind of have always known Back to the Future, kind of like Star Wars. I don't remember the first time I saw that. So, that's kind of how I am with the first Back to the Future.
Right. So my introduction to it is I found Back to the Future before I found Star Wars. Like I remember being just because it came out in 85, right?
Right,
1985.
1985.
Okay. That's the same year I was born. And I got into Star Wars when I was 7 or 8. And so that would have been early 90s, but I got into Back to the Future a couple years before that. So I know it sounds young, but I had to have been like 5 or 6, wanting to rent the videotape.
Yeah.
Um, and and I think it was just the concept of time travel. Like as a kid, that just captivates you. The thought that you can go back in a
Mhm.
machine and see things that happened before or in the future. Like that concept sold me as a kid. Even though the first movie is more about what if you got to hang out with your parents in high school? Like
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
more of what it's about. The time machine is just the device to get them there. But um, yeah, I mean, I was captivated as a kid. I remember on VHS. I remember where the tracking would mess up on what scenes. I watched it that many times. So even today, when I watch it, it was one of my first really dive-ins, especially when we get to it part 2. I think I watched part 2 the most growing up, because of all the future stuff in it.
And
But
we didn't own it. So, I don't remember where I watched it.
mhm,
Maybe it was playing on television. Um, I don't think I saw it in the theater because when it came out, I was 5. Maybe I did. I really don't know. I
yeah,
just know Back to the Future. It's kind of strange. It's one of
it's
those that I don't really remember the first time I watched it. I mean, I remember like the
right.
first time I watched Ghostbusters, I was actually like 9 or 10. I was a little bit older by the time I actually
Mhm.
watched Ghostbusters. But yeah, Back to the Future, I don't know when the first time I watched it. I
Yeah.
have no
It
idea.
was just I was just so young. It's one of my first movie memories for sure. And back in those days before DVDs, I remember recording it and
Yep.
like trying to block out the commercials and like all that kind of stuff that today's kids don't even have to think about.
And Michael J.
Um,
Fox was huge. I mean, he
Huge.
was he was in everything. But what I did watch a lot as a kid was Teen Wolf. So and they came out around the same time, he filmed both of them simultaneously or one right after the other, something like that. Like, they fired Eric Stoltz. He w They were filming Back to the Future. Eric Stoltz was
Hmm.
Marty, and Michael J. Fox was Teen Wolf, and he really didn't wanna do that movie, but he got interested, wanting to know what was being filmed by, with Steven Spielberg and Robert Zemeckis and all
Right.
those guys, and I had learned this before by watching the Movies That Made Us on Netflix,
Oh, that's a good series.
but then it was reiterated on Michael J. Fox's show, Still, that just came out on Apple TV Plus, which was really great,
I need to
and,
check that out.
he talks about it, how he just kind of inquired, and they weren't very happy with Eric Stoltz's performance. Not that he's a bad
Hmm.
actor, just he didn't have the comedic timing that they wanted from Marty. And
Right.
once Michael J. Fox decided to do it, remember he was filming both at the same time. He get like 2 or 3 hours sleep between that and Family Ties, and it was just
Yeah,
it was crazy.
I was going to bring that up that he had a commitment to Family
Yep.
Ties as well around that time. And they had to shoot Back to the Future at odd hours because back in that day, like a commitment to a TV show was like a big deal. Like you
Yep.
can't break that.
And that's what had
So
I mean,
yeah.
but that's what had made him, you know, yeah, that was a
Hmm.
big deal.
That's what
So,
put him on the map.
yeah, and, just Doc, always loving Doc's, you can quote him and act like him, and that was just as a kid, that this show is just great. It is a great
Right.
even though it probably should be PG-13, um, as a kid, it's very, and it's just like you said, it's subject matter and all that good stuff. It's just I love it as an adult, but kids,
Right.
it's a big deal.
And it's cool too because it's one of those movies from my childhood. When I go back to watch it, I appreciate it more because, and we'll talk as we get into it. There's some stuff as a kid that flew right over my head
Right, right. Yeah,
that
you
I
just
didn't
don't.
even
Yeah.
catch. And back in the day, you said like the subject matter, like Disney passed on it. They were offered it and passed on it because they didn't like the mom falling in love with the kid
Right.
thing.
They were like, "Ugh,
Yeah.
that's gross." And it kinda is when
Yeah.
you watch, it kinda is, but
It is, but the way they do it,
yeah, they
it
do it
doesn't
in a
feel
comedic way. They don't do it in a
right.
gross way. Yeah.
Right.
Well, with that, I guess we'll kinda start, diving into it. The opening, it's a neat opening, all the clocks, of course. Tick, 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 tick. You see
Mhm.
all these different clocks, and, um,
We're
then
playing with
you
time, so they use
playing
the
with time,
clocks.
you
Yeah.
know everything is gonna be about time. Um
Mhm.
the state of the apartment was disgusting, and you could tell somebody hadn't been there in a while. But then as you're
Right.
listening to the news, they're giving you all these little foreshadowing tidbits
Mhm.
in the news, about the theft of
Missing
plutonium,
plutonium.
all that good stuff. And then whenever he Marty kicks the skateboard, what does it hit? Plutonium, handle with care, so as a
Right.
kid, you're not registering that. That's the kind of stuff you're talking about. You're not really registering all that stuff. You're just kind of looking at the clocks and the dog food and everything, but you're not paying attention to what they're saying on the news and the plutonium and all that. At least I didn't,
Right.
you know.
No, yeah, it's cool because like you said, there's so much buried in that scene and it's all subtle. There's even a guy hanging on the arms of the clock. Um, there's some cool little there's a Denver's Bronco clock. They talk about 1985 model Toyotas.
Yep, yep.
Like you said, the
With the truck.
plutonium.
Yep.
Oh, the truck, and it says Brown Mansion destroyed.
Oh yeah, you
And
see the newspaper
in one of
article.
yeah.
Yeah. So they
So
so when it goes back in time, you're like, "Oh, okay. He had a mansion." Okay.
right.
Yeah.
And I remember the dog food grossing me out as a kid.
Oh, really?
I mean, just
It's
it's
nasty.
like
Yeah.
it's nasty, and
Yeah.
it's just been pouring it for days without him being there.
Yeah. And also during the scene, so of course he hooks up to the amplifier, and
Hmm.
the whole he cranks it up and it blows up and he flies. Every kid remembers that. I mean, that's something as a
I
kid, it just sticks out like a sore
distinctly,
thumb.
uh-huh. And he's showing, he's being a kid in that moment. A kid would turn it up all the way, see
And
what
do
would
stupid
happen.
things like that, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
also
that
another
was
little
cool.
tidbit, the reason he's wearing sunglasses is they had to put whatever brand of sunglasses that was, they had a deal. They had to put the sunglasses in the movie at some
Oh, I
point.
didn't know that.
Yeah, so they were contractually obligated to put those sunglasses in the movie, so they put them in just that one scene.
That's cool because I mean Michael J. Fox alone, but with the glasses and everything. Like when I was growing up, I just thought it was cool. But now looking back, it's so 80s.
Oh,
You know the the
the
jean
aviators,
jacket.
man.
Yeah, it's very 80s.
Tom Cruise really made them popular in the next year in '86. Yeah,
Right, because that would have been right after this. You're right.
yeah. So then he figures out that he's late for school because Doc's
Hmm.
experiment, all his clocks were slow. And
Right.
then you get the great Huey Lewis in the News
Yes.
song,
Power of love.
Power of Love, man. Actually, all of he did a few. Is that one Back in Time? Are those the two? I guess those are the only two songs
Those
he did, huh, for the soundtrack.
those were definitely the two big ones. Yeah.
But the Power of Love is perfect 80s, and it just goes
Hmm.
great with the movie.
It does, and then right. right as that's going on, Doc says over the phone, "Meet me at Twin Pines
Twin Pines
Mall,
Mall.
1:15 a.m." And that I guess it's a crane shot, but when the music kicks and he comes down the driveway, you see the Burger King,
Yep,
dude. Like that just takes me back. Like that
man.
is, I mean, I didn't live in California, but that's how the Burger King looked here. That's how a lot of the buildings looked. Like that one sweeping shot when he's on the skateboard is one of my favorite shots in the movie.
Yeah, that shot is taken at it was filmed in a town or whatever. The majority of Hill Valley is, in the back lot, but that was filmed in a nearby
Mm,
town. That
right.
one little scene, little or shot, whatever.
I love that. And you see like there's a bunch in there. Bunch you see like a church, Jesus Saves, you see there's a what is it called? Statler Toyota. You know,
Mhm.
you see the and then that's more when he's going into what you're saying,
Yeah,
into
they're
like
in
the
the back lot at that point. But everything
mm-hmm,
80s you can imagine is in there. They had the aerobics class going
totally.
on, all that good
Yes.
stuff. I mean, it's great. What a great time. 80s was
Well,
great.
and it's a cool time capsule too, because when they were shooting it, they weren't thinking like, okay, let's make this look 80s. It was the 80s.
Yeah, it was brilliant. It was great.
Yeah, so that's funny. Looking back on it, you know, that really stands out in a
The
good way.
denim jacket with the denim jeans.
Yes, all that stuff. Even like the suspenders he has on and the Nike shoes and all that. Um, and then from there we go into the school, right?
Get to
And then Mr.
school,
Strickland.
you see Principal Strickland, yep, who
Uh-huh.
says no McFly ever amounted to anything in the history of Hill Valley.
That's a great quote. Yeah.
That's a great actor. I forget his name, but he's great. He's old now. He's like in his 80s, kind of like Christopher Lloyd. He's
Oh yeah, they're
old.
all getting up there. You're right.
Yeah, he's old. I saw him. He does comic cons and stuff like that too, and he's up there, man. He's
Oh
up there.
yeah, that's cool.
But yeah, he's great as Strickland in all of them. You know,
Mm-hmm.
uh, pretty much. I'm gonna say it right now. I'm not gonna wait till the end of these reviews. This
Mm-hmm.
is one of the greatest trilogies ever made, hands down. It's also one of the most complete trilogies ever made. It has a
Mm-hmm.
beginning, a middle, an end. They they have prequels built in. You know what I'm saying? They have
Mm-hmm.
sequels built in because they go back, they go forward, and they're never gonna make any more Back to the Future movies. I mean, it's complete. It's on an island by itself, and
Yeah.
you're not gonna change my mind.
Yeah, so I know we don't always agree, but on this, 100%, like this is one of the best trilogies ever made. I saw it early in life, like, and, and it's so all three of them, like you said, they're all just as good as they're all good,
Mhm.
and they make sense. And when they repeat themselves, it's on purpose, and it ties into the story. Like there's a lot of parallels, right? Some of the same things happen with different time periods, and it's all done very orchestrated very well.
Yeah, and it's funny because Robert Zemeckis said that people point out a plot hole or whatever. They say, "Well, but if he went back and did this, then this would have happened." And he says, "Well, here's the thing. It's a movie.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Time travel is not real. If anything, this movie kind of proves how time travel is not possible. So,
Right.
it's just kind of
Well,
it's funny.
whenever you bring up time travel, though, like that is probably the hardest concept to not have any loopholes in it. You
Mhm.
know, because as soon as you go back, the butterfly effect, you can did things change because you went back, or you know what I mean, or was it
Mhm.
already planned? So there's a lot there. And okay, so then you learn about the lightning struck the clock tower in that
Right?
opening
Save the
scene.
clock tower. Save the clock tower.
Save the and she's shaking the can in their face.
I would have knocked
Um,
that can right out of her hand, bro.
and you learn early on that he's into music, but he's fearing rejection, right?
Mhm.
Of because his girlfriend's like, why don't you
Well, I
turn it into
think
the record company?
yeah, but that was after he got rejected. That was after he went and they showed the
Oh, is
audition.
that
Yeah, the
that's right.
audition the audition was right after. The principal told him he'd never amount to anything. Then there was the audition, and Huey
Right.
Lewis himself
He's
told him
one of the judges.
he was just too darn loud. And he said
Yes.
the reason he says that is because him and his band, they were rejected at a young age because they were too loud. So that's why he said
Oh,
that in the
that's
movie.
funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, good
I've watched
movies
this
like
movie with the
this,
commentary track, so, I have lots of, useless knowledge.
that's good. No, that's good. And it is kind of funny, but you don't really notice it how it starts at the beginning of school when he gets the tardy, and then the next scene is he's at the end of the school day. You
Mhm.
know, we you could argue maybe you could have got a scene of him in school, but you don't need it.
Well,
It
the
flies by
movie is
pretty
already
quick.
2 hours long, so it's one of those
Yeah.
things where I'm sure there's more, they're just like, "Okay, we gotta cut this, we gotta cut it."
Well, and he does go to school later, just not during his decade.
Uh,
So,
so, yeah, so now we're outside Save the Clock Tower. He wants to go to the lake
mhm.
because he wants to be a little horny teenager and, can't understand why his mom wouldn't want him to go. Like, dude, nobody's mom would want them to go at 17 years old. They know what you're gonna
Right,
do. We've all been
right.
17. We know exactly what we were thinking about.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, like
Totally.
my daughter's 13. There's no way in hell she's going with any guy at 17 years old to a lake by themselves.
I
Not happening. Not happening.
I totally but as a kid, you're like, "Man, like, why is his mom such a jerk?" But then when you're older, you're like, obvious. That's some of the stuff that flies over your head when you're watching it at 6 or 7, you
Mhm.
know?
Then you see the 4 by
Um
4 how that's like his dream
mhm,
truck. So
right.
you get a little foreshadowing
Uh-huh.
right there.
And then we cut to him going home on the skateboard,
Yeah.
almost at dusk, and we meet well, first we see the wrecked car, and then we meet the wise guy that was driving the wrecked car and how nice of a guy he is.
Thomas Wilson is awesome as Biff and all of Biff's family. I mean,
The
this guy
casting is
kills it,
great.
man. He just kills it in every movie.
Mhm.
It's just amazing. Like, how did this guy not get more roles? Like
I know.
as good as he was, maybe, I think what happens a lot of times people get typecast and
Mhm.
maybe everybody wanted to cast him as like a bully or as a tough, and he didn't want to do that. I don't know, because he's really a very nice guy in real life.
Right.
So I don't know. Maybe he just didn't want. He would turn down roles because he didn't want to play that. I don't know. It's kind of interesting.
I think he's like a preacher now too because I've seen stuff with him online, you
Okay.
know? He's like yeah, so he's like a big guy in that realm and um one of my favorite lines is he's yelling at George and he goes, How could you let me drive a car and not tell me it had a blind spot?" And
It's
first
like
of all, he
all
lets
cars
you
have a
borrow
blind
it.
spot.
And then even worse than that, he's like, and then when the guy bumped into me, I spilled beer all over me.
I want to know who's going to pay for this. Yeah, it's
So
it's
just in
very
that,
much a great setup, a great character setup. You just
yeah,
know, this guy is a piece of work. Now, I don't think you realize if it's your first time, you don't realize how big a part he's going to play in the
right.
story. You know, but he's fantastic. The makeup is great.
Makeup is good. Yeah, because a lot of them are aged up. So Strickland's aged up.
Leah
Marty's dad
Thompson
is aged up. Leah
is
Thompson's
younger.
aged up.
She's younger than Michael J. Fox.
I knew she was at least around the same age,
Yeah,
but
she's
yeah,
like a year or two
I didn't
younger.
realize. Wow. So yeah, because she's playing the mom. So obviously they did that so that they could play the younger parts
Correct.
themselves because they're more in the movie as their younger selves.
Nowadays, they're
Um,
just de-age them. Why not? Why not have
right,
60-year-old
digitally.
people playing 20-year-olds or 17-year-olds? That works
Yeah,
out
you're right.
great.
It's like the opposite.
I can't, dude. I'm telling you, it's gonna be terrible with
Um,
him being so old and them de-aging him. The way he's gonna move, it's probably gonna look terrible.
I mean, I'm gonna remain optimistic, but I'm thinking of like the Netflix show or the movie with Robert De Niro that got criticized of that.
Well, there was one scene that was really bad, like, it was terrible.
Yeah, where he's stomping on the guy or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so from there,
Well, you realize at
there,
this point,
go ahead.
you understand that his dad is has no backbone, you know? You
Right.
realize that his dad is, like and then you see his mom, and she's an alcoholic.
Uh-huh.
His brother and sister are kinda like, "Eh," you know, they're
Well,
not
his
really
brother works at McDonald's
or something, yeah, they're
and
not
he
setting the
and
world
he's
on
like,
fire.
yeah, he's McDonald's and he's got to be 20 at
Oh,
least.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yes. So not like, yeah. I mean,
Not setting the world on
typical,
fire.
yeah, exactly. Um, and the dad, like, when he does that annoying laugh when he's,
Yeah, Crispin Glover, he may be a crazy SOB, but he's
uh,
really good. I mean, in this I can't stress enough how good everybody is in this movie.
oh,
Um,
Crispin Glover's great. There's not a bad actor in this, at
well,
least not in the
but
principal
here's the
cast.
thing. This makes it highlights how important a good director is
Hmm.
because a good director, I mean, he could take anybody who has just a half a lick of talent and make a good
Hmm.
picture. Because you know, some of these people have been in bad roles in other movies and whatnot,
Right.
but it was just it Zemeckis is just very good, you know, he brings the best out in
Zemeckis and
people.
Bob Gale. So Bob Gale wrote a majority of it, but Zemeckis helped as well. And then Zemeckis directed it. But they worked together, Bob Gale and Robert
Mhm.
Zemeckis.
Bob and Bob.
Steve, yeah, Bob and Bob. Spielberg took a chance on them, right? Because they had done a couple small things before this, but nothing that was successful really. And then obviously this was huge. Zemeckis went on to do what? He did Roger Rabbit, he did Castaway, he did Polar Express. He's done
Forrest
a lot.
Gump.
Forrest Gump, which was probably his other biggest one, right? This
Mhm.
one and Forrest Gump are probably the two biggest. So yeah, he's done a lot. Um, so
So at
they
this point,
talk
he
about
goes
their
to
first
sleep.
date,
Oh, yeah, they bring up the fish under the sea dance, as she says, the
right?
enchantment under the sea. Yeah,
And then when the mom says it, she's like, and then I know I'd spend the rest of my life with him.
it's
And it's very dry. She's definitely got a buzz, and he's going,
at that point,
and
she's questioning her life choices, yeah.
right, and her brother's in jail, right?
Oh,
That's another family dysfunction added to it. He
Uncle
didn't make parole
Jailbird
again, so they have
Joey.
to eat the cake. Jail for Joey, yeah.
Yeah.
Which comes up later. Uh, so much stuff, like everything comes up later.
Yeah.
Um,
So now he goes
it,
to sleep and Doc calls and wakes him up, says, "You didn't
mhm.
forget." "Oh, no, 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 I'm up," which he clearly forgot, and then he goes and
Oh,
he
real
meets
quick though,
Doc.
when I was a kid, I used to think it was cool to fall asleep in your clothes because
Cause
Marty
he
did
did
it.
it?
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah. So yeah, he's gonna meet him at 1:16 a.m. at Twin Pines Mall. And growing up, we had a mall by our house, West Oaks Mall on Highway 6. It's pretty much gone now, but it looked exactly like that, like the parking lot, the Dillards or J.C. Penney's. So growing up, I always felt like, man, this is the mall down the street. When I was a kid. So
Yeah.
this movie is very attached to me. Like other than Star Wars, this one is very close to me. But yeah, go ahead. So
So
the
he meet
DeLorean.
yeah, he meets him there and then backs out the DeLorean and Marty gets all excited because he's like, "Hey, it's a DeLorean, right?" You know, because DeLorean that was a big deal, even though they only made him for what 3 years, 2 or 3 years.
Right.
Um, it was a colossal failure, but the car looks neat, and that was perfect for the look of the time machine. You know,
Totally.
I think
And
they
I
had thought
was,
like a refrigerator at first, like a refrigerator was one option, and they had all kind of a
yeah.
phone booth was another. They had all kind of like crazy ideas, but they
Well,
ended
another
up
series
deciding on
used
that.
that later. The phone booth thing, another
Oh,
series used that
Doctor
later.
Who. Yeah, I don't watch that crap.
Well,
Um,
that one, but also Bill and Ted.
oh yeah, Bill and Ted. You see, I'm not a big Bill and
Yeah.
Ted guy, but you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. I was able to go to probably 5 or 6 years ago, I went to a Comic-Con and they had a DeLorean that you could get into and stuff. It's just that's still cool. The design
Yeah,
of it, all of
at
that, the stainless
Universal
steel.
at Universal, they had I think it's still there. They had one that was one of the ones that was used during filming. You could take pictures with it and stuff. I've taken pictures with it a few times. Actually, I'm going back
Oh,
to
that's cool.
Universal. I'm going back next week, so I'll take some pictures for you, and then I'll post it on the next video.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
The Back to the
Um,
Future ride is gone. It is now, The Simpsons, but I rode it back in 1996. I rode the Back to the Future ride before it was decommissioned.
oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty that actually, that's where I bought my first copy of the trilogy. I bought it on VHS. That was my, souvenir spending money. I was 16 years old, and
Yeah,
bought the Back to the Future trilogy on VHS over there.
that's cool. And that's what a lot of people don't get too is like now you can find anything.
Oh,
But
yeah,
back in the day before DVD, it was like, oh my gosh, I found a copy of this. Like they weren't everywhere like DVDs were after that. But
yeah,
so
you'd
we
have to
go
go to
into
a specific store for it.
right, you had to hunt for it.
Mhm.
Um, so then we meet Doc, right?
Mhm.
And he's as quirky as you would think. You know, he's out in the middle of the mall at 1 something in the morning. He's obviously been up all night. Um, and Einstein, his dog, is basically his space monkey, right? Like that's the first thing he's gonna attempt to go forward in time with. Is that where we're
Right.
at when he sends
Yep,
the
that's where
dog
we
in
are.
time?
He
Okay.
shows off to Marty and he says, he puts Einstein in there, shows him that the clocks are synced, and then,
Mm-hmm.
when this baby hits 88 out miles per hour, you're gonna see some serious shit, and boom, he goes and he's like, "You disintegrated Einstein," all that good stuff.
Right, because he still doesn't. Marty still doesn't really know what's going on,
Right, he
and
wanted to show him, he didn't wanna tell him, he wanted to show him.
right, and then then he and then he's in the middle of talking to him, and he's like, "Oh, look out!" And then bam, it pops right in the scene, and um, it's like frozen over because going through time, they think maybe
Yeah,
everything gets kind of iced over, and Einstein's now a minute. Is he a
right.
minute ahead of them
He's a minute ahead because he
because he
skipped
skipped?
over the minute. Oh,
Right,
no, he's a minute behind because he skipped over the minute, so they're at
right.
117 and he's at 116 or 118
That's
and
right,
117, something like that. Because it was
right.
instantaneous for him, but they had to wait a minute until he got there.
That's it. That's exactly what it is.
Yep.
Um, and
And
then
then he's
he
telling him about the dates,
right.
and you witnessed the birth of Christ, the December 25th, 00 is hilarious.
I
And
love that. And the Declaration of Independence.
right. But then
And
he
again,
goes, November 5th, 1955. And because he was talking to him about it and everything, he left it on that day. So
right.
once the Libyans show up and start they end up shooting Doc and start
Yeah,
chasing
he
Marty.
dies.
Right, he does die. And I remember as a kid being confused. I was like, "Okay, did he die or did he not die?" Like,
Right.
uh, whatever. So, but that's how he ends up November 5th, 1955 is because Doc had was
Uh-huh.
punching it in, showing him the times.
Yes. And that whole scene when they're coming up on the mall, he's like, I can't believe it. They found me. Run for it, Marty. And then he told him that he was going to build him a bomb, but then he gave him
Mhm.
pinball machine parts or
Right,
something.
right.
Like they wouldn't do that today. Like they wouldn't connect someone with that group doing something like
Well,
that.
for a little while, they said I think it was not long after 9/11, for the TV versions, they changed it. They didn't call
Oh,
them the Libyans, they said something else. I don't know what they said, I don't remember, but there was an
wow.
edited version that they took out the Libyans because of, it was such a sensitive issue.
Right. And like you said a minute ago, like the dates, like the Declaration of Independence, birth of Christ, I love that. That's great. But today they'd probably gloss over some of that stuff.
Oh,
So
yeah, yeah,
it's,
yeah. Yeah.
so I like that of it. And one of the best lines in there, what is it? So the Libyans are chasing Marty, right? Because Marty thinking instinctively, jumps in the car, takes off to get away. And, I don't usually swear either, but he goes, let's see if you bastards can do 90.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And he out he outruns them, but then all the time stuff starts turning on. And then, you can go ahead, go into what you were
Well,
saying there that
one before we go any too much further, one real plot hole is whenever he asks Doc, does it run on regular unleaded or does it run on regular gas? And he said, unfortunately, no, plutonium.
mm,
That makes it sound like even the regular combustion engine doesn't run on gasoline. But then in part three, whenever the gas line breaks,
oh, they need gas.
they need gas, and he says, "Well, we got Mr. Fusion, right?" And that's when Doc says, "Mr. Fusion powers the time circuits, but the regular combustion engine always ran on gasoline." So I think that
Right.
might be something they kind of that's aside from a time travel plot hole, that seems like one of the few like real plot holes.
Right. Because it's okay in 2 and 3 that they don't use plutonium because they say he changed that
Right? He uses Mr.
to
Fusion.
Mr. Fusion instead of plutonium. But you're saying it always ran on gas. So
Right,
it,
and
it,
Doc
it should be
told him, "No, it doesn't." He should have
right.
said at that point, he
It
should have
runs on
said,
both.
"Gasoline powers the engine, but the time circuits run on plutonium." But that's not what he says. He
Yeah.
says, "Unfortunately, no,
Dang.
we need something a little more kick, plutonium." So that's something that I was like, I think that's a plot hole, you know?
Where's George Lucas when you need him? They could have just edited that line in.
Well, whatever. There's gonna be
um,
a special edition.
but yeah, honestly though, that wouldn't have been hard to add those few lines in when one of their backs are turned.
Yeah.
Um,
So he crashes in the farm and old Mr. Peabody, who he had talked about, had a crazy idea about breeding pine trees.
right.
Uh,
And I didn't mention this earlier, but I watched these movies with my dad growing up. And that's one of the lines we'd always repeat. Old man Peabody owned all of this. And
as
they had
far
a
as the eye
crazy
can see.
idea. Yes, a crazy idea of breeding pine trees. So then when he goes back in time, it's not the mall, it's Peabody's farm or property.
Right.
Yeah.
It's on the
And then he
farm, and
crashes.
so he crashes, and the kid, they go to the family goes to check it out. They see the DeLorean. The DeLorean looks futuristic or whatever. The logo
Uh-huh.
comes up. So Zemeckis said they had an artist draw a comic book to look kind of like that, so it would scare the crap out
That
of
was
them.
cool.
Um,
Yeah, you're
but
talking about
remember, that's
like that.
1955. Yes, that one. Awesome.
Uh-huh.
That's great.
Yeah,
So
it's the
it
figure.
okay. Oh, sweet. Yeah,
Yeah.
I got Doc right here. Um, it's
Yeah.
good because 1955 is just 7 or 8 years after uh the alien crash at Area 51. So
Oh,
there's
yeah, you're right.
everybody was alien scared of alien and all that good stuff. So it kind of it goes good with the time period.
That is good. I like that. Um, and then the kid's like, "Oh, he's turning into human form
Shoot
when he's
him.
coming out of." Yeah. And even the
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 spacesuit.
hazmat suit, or it
Hazmat
looks,
suit. Looks like a
yeah, it
spacesuit, yeah.
looks it looks like a spacesuit. So that was cool how that all ties in
A little
to
piece of
look like that.
trivia, the little boy, I found this out years ago, and I don't remember how. I think I recognized his voice. He is the
Hmm.
voice of Flounder in, Little Mermaid, the little boy.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yep.
And that
I'm
would have
not sure
been
how I figured that out, but I remember figuring it out years ago.
that's
I was
interesting.
I was probably looking on IMDb at everything, and I
Uh-huh.
saw the boy, and then I looked at his history, and I saw that he was Flounder, the voice, and then when you listen to Flounder, you listen to that kid, it's like, "Holy crap, that is him."
That is an interesting bit of trivia.
Yeah. So, yeah, he scares him off after he shoots at him, and Marty tears butt out of there and destroys one of his pines.
Okay, he destroys a pine, and then Peabody shoots his own mailbox.
Yeah,
And what's cool is you didn't know it was Peabody till he shot his mailbox, because then
correct.
it says Peabody on the mailbox. That was a cool little additive. Um, so then after that, he, like you said, he spins out of there, and he drives up to his neighborhood, right?
These lion estates being built.
Yeah, and it's just the That's cool. It's just the signs. And when he gets out of the car, he's, obviously stressed and freaked out, but he bumps his head.
Hmm.
I guarantee you that was an accident.
Absolutely. When I was watching
Yeah.
it, I was like, "Oh, that had to be a take they just left in there." It looked more
Yeah.
natural. It looked more, yeah, it was good. It was a good take.
Yeah. I like that. That's funny you noticed that too, because it looked like one of those things that just happened, but it looked good, so they kept it in.
So next, they he well, the car won't start.
Hmm.
After he sees his neighborhood and everything, he can't get the car to start. So he pushes it behind the sign and walks towards Hill Valley.
I love that he pushes it behind the sign.
Yeah.
That's just one of those things that stick with me.
So he makes it to Hill Valley, and then Mr. Sandman song plays, and it starts
Uh-huh.
letting you know that he's in 1955 real fast.
Right. And you see Reagan's name on a billboard for a movie called Cattle Queen of Montana. So, Reagan's an actor, and that's
Ronald
who
Reagan,
he
the actor.
the actor. That'll come up in a little bit. That's another good line. So it's cool because now we walked through the same town in the 80s. Now we're walking through it in the 50s, and you see like the romanticism of the 50s, right? Like at Texaco, all the guys come out, pump your
Yeah,
gas. It seems like a more wholesome, innocent time.
a record
Um,
store.
Record store, the clock tower works.
Clock Tower works. There's a beat cop. Um,
Uh-huh.
because that was a thing back then. It's not really a thing. They still have them in New York because they have to, but yeah,
Right.
it just really felt like the 50s.
Totally. And then he wanders into the diner, right?
Well, he sees the newspaper, he's like, "This can't be." It's like,
That's
"Dude,
right.
you're in a time machine. How can it what do you mean it can't be? Doc literally showed you a time machine."
That's like the Indiana Jones thing when he sees
Right.
God and still unsure.
Yeah. I mean, he uses the power of God to resurrect and or to heal his father, but those are just stories, kid. Whatever.
Yeah, exactly. But at least Michael J. Fox is a kid.
Yeah, at least he's 17 years old. He's not
Yeah.
a professor. So he
Right.
goes in the diner and tries to call Doc, all that good stuff, doesn't answer.
Uh-huh.
Um, so
They
then
have
they're
that
like,
funny bit.
what's with the
Oh,
life
go ahead.
preserver?
Yes. You think you're gonna drown? And then all the stuff with the Coke, he's like, well, can I have a tab? Obviously a drink. And he's like, well, you can't give you a tab unless you buy something. He goes, well, give me a Pepsi free. You can't have a Pepsi free, kid, or whatever he
You want
says.
a Pepsi, you got to pay for it.
Yeah, you gotta pay for it.
So
He goes,
just give
just
me
give me
something
something
without
without any
sugar.
sugar in it.
Here's some black coffee.
I love that. And then we get a really cool shot when he pats the back of his head. Is that when he does that?
He
And
pats
then
his
you hear,
head, and then Biff comes
yeah.
in. Yeah.
And then he's sitting next to his dad, but when you hear him say McFly, they both
They both
turn.
turn. Yeah, same
That's
way.
a
Yeah.
that's a great shot. And you might say, well, his dad just happened to be there. Who cares? It's a small town.
Who
I like
cares?
it.
It's a
Yeah,
movie.
yeah, exactly. I like that shot because, like, even though he's not a pushover like his dad is, they still have some of the same
Mhm.
attributes, So,
Yeah, so you get
um,
the whole Biff messing with the McFly. "Hello, McFly." All
like
that
this
good
guy was
stuff.
always a freaking jerk,
Yep, and his dad was always a weakling. He was always
right?
his whole life he's been bullied by, Biff, poor guy.
Yes. So, back in the 80s, Biff is saying you need to do the reports for work. And here he needs him to do his homework, right? Because he goes, well, what if I handed my homework in your
In your
handwriting? You
handwriting.
want me to,
You
yeah,
won't get
you
kicked out of
want me to
school. You
kick,
wouldn't want that to happen, would you?
would you? um,
Yeah.
and
Oh, we forgot about, uh so after they leave or whatever, that's whenever, Mayor Goldie Wilson comes
Gold
in and
Wilson.
yeah. He's like, "That's right, you're gonna be mayor." Yeah. I met
Man.
him. His picture is on my wall. I'm looking at it right now.
I
So,
remember you showing me that.
yeah,
That's so cool.
yeah. He was one of the
Um,
first, celebrities I ever met at a Comic-Con. Him and Bennett from Commando, Vernon Wells, were my first 2 celebrities I ever met.
That's cool. That's another good character as well. But see, even that part with Goldie Wilson, like he's a very small part, but very memorable and
Mhm.
quotable.
Yeah.
Like that's how all this
Oh,
movie is
yeah.
so quotable.
He told me people just see him in the street and they'll just say, "Mayor!" Like,
That's
he's actually
cool.
been in quite a bit of stuff. He's been in more than just that, but that's what he's most known for, that little role as mayor. Well, actually, you don't even see him as mayor. You see his campaign
Right.
vehicle, but and you see his picture and makeup, but you only see him as a young man in the diner.
Right. But again, what this series does so well is he pops up again later. You
Oh,
know,
as a salesman, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
His
So
grandson or whatever,
his
or
great,
my
yeah, one
father
of
or
his,
whatever. Yeah.
right. So that's something this movie does so well is um, they bring the same people back, um, for small roles, but memorable roles. So he gets the idea to be mayor. He's like, because Marty goes, "That's right, you're going to be mayor." He goes, "Mayor," like you were just saying. Um, and then George leaves, his dad, and Marty
So he
follows him.
follows him, right?
And it'd probably be pretty devastating to learn that your dad's a peeping Tom.
Yeah, he's a peeping Tom.
Another quotable line. Yeah.
Yep.
Um, so, you know, George, he's up there and Marty's looking up at his dad. And they said earlier in the movie they fell in love because Lorraine's dad hit George with the car.
Yep.
They nursed him in the house and they fell in love after they went to and here the dad hits Marty because Marty's in the street. No, Marty saves his dad from
Marty
getting hit.
pushes
That's what.
dad out the way, so Marty
Right,
is screwing with time, and he's trying to
right,
destroy us all.
right. So yeah, exactly. So that moment is what messed everything up
That is correct.
because
That
now
was
Marty
the
gets hit with the car.
and then he wakes up to his mom's voice, which we get in all 3 movies, and it's
Mm-hmm.
you have to have Marty being knocked out and waking up to the sound of his mom's voice, but then when
Right,
he wakes up, it's a young mom who, um, is like a sex fiend
right. She
because
doesn't mind
that's
looking at him
all
in his under.
all she thinks about is dirty things. That's all Lorraine is worried about is dirty
Uh huh.
things. So
He's
she's
Rizzo from Greece. Yeah,
yeah, like, why did she take his pants off? Like, she had no reason to take Marty's pants off. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and it's but obviously that leads to the funny bit that she thinks his name's Calvin Klein
Calvin
because that's what's
Klein,
on his
yeah.
underwear. You
It's
know,
funny because she's like, "You mind if I sit here?" And he's like, "No." And she sits and he's like
it,
I mean, can you
that's another good shot.
imagine how freaky that would be, if
That would be weird.
you're ne right next to your parents when they're 17 years old, that would be the craziest thing.
That would be like because seeing him at the age you're at. I mean, that's and then on top of that, his mom, like she's very aggressive and stuff. So it's like,
Yes. Not only is he next to his mom, she wants him. It's disgusting. Yeah.
um, so oh, she's like, it's my mom or something, and she goes, "Hurry, put your pants
Put your
back on."
pants on. Look, I laugh every time he goes to put his pants on and he falls. For some reason, that's hilarious to me. Like, the way
Yeah,
Michael
well,
J. Fox
it's
does it, it's I don't know if it was done on purpose or not, but if it was done on purpose or if it was an accident, it's perfect.
he plays it like he just got wrecked,
Mhm.
like he just got hit in the groin, and then they come downstairs for dinner, right? And you meet his grandparents and uncle, right? But then that's her
Well,
her family.
you see Uncle Jailbird
Great,
Joey, better get used to these bars.
great,
Um,
great foreshadowing there.
but, the mom is funny, and she's actually the mom in, Gremlins. She's the one that
Oh, okay,
she puts the gremlin in the blender and in the microwave. She's the main character's mom,
okay.
and I just saw she was somebody else's mom. Oh, what movie was I watching? It's gonna come to me later, but she's a
Okay.
mom in another, 80s movie. I was like, "Oh, that's the mom from Gremlins and Back to the Future." Dadgummit, what was that?
That's
I
so she
can't
was
remember.
obviously a character actor from that time
Mhm.
that was used a lot. Um, I like at the dinner table how having a TV is a big deal.
Yep.
And and Marty's like, well, we have two of them. And they're like, no one has two
Has 2
television sets.
television sets.
Yeah. And he goes,
Now what's
well, you
crazy
must be
is,
rich.
I mean, I'm only 5 years older than you, but
Hmm.
we only had 1 color TV in our house for the longest time, and it was the main living
Wow.
room console TV that was, the wooden console TV. It was a
Uh-huh.
25-inch TV. That was the only color TV. We had a small black and white. My oldest sister had one, like a 13-inch
Hmm.
black and white TV, and then my parents in their bedroom had a black and white TV. Because TVs, I mean, they were
Wow.
expensive in the '80s, man. A color
Right.
TV, that was expensive.
Oh, absolutely. So we had a couple of TVs, but because I'm a little bit after you, but I remember I didn't have a TV in my room till I was probably, I think, like 13 or 14. Like, it was a big deal when you
Yeah.
got a TV in your room.
We
Like,
Me
man,
and
I
my
can watch stuff.
brother saved up our allowance to buy one.
That's cool.
It took like a year because we didn't get much of an allowance. We got like I'm not even kidding, like $1 a week
Yeah.
or something like that. And so we saved up our money and bought like a 15-inch color TV. Probably
Wow.
I was we had a Nintendo by this point.
Uh-huh.
So it's probably 86, 87, something like that, where we were
That's
able
awesome.
to buy a TV. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember mine was a 13-inch, and it was like such a big deal to have one. And then down the road, I remember my parents got a better TV and I got their old TV. Like that kind
Oh
of
yeah.
stuff was more
Oh
common
yeah.
then.
Yeah, now it's like you buy a TV, you could buy a 35-inch or what 32-inch TV for like $125, and if it
Well, and not
breaks,
only
you buy
that,
another
we
one.
all have TV. Yeah, and we all have TVs in our pockets, technically.
That's correct. I am filming this with my pocket TV.
Right. And so am I.
So
Um,
yeah, so he leaves because his mom makes him feel uncomfortable by grabbing him by the
mhm.
leg, and, when he walks out, the dad is like, "He's an idiot, and if you have any kids like that, I'll disown you." It's hilarious.
Yes,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
it actually is her kid.
yeah.
And then he goes, who the hell is John F. Kennedy?
Kennedy, yeah,
He said,
yeah.
that's John F. Kennedy Street. Because Kennedy was in the 60s. This is in the 50s. So they don't know who he is. It's
Yeah, he was
kind of like
assassinated in
later,
'63.
right? So kind of like later how they don't know who Clint Eastwood is, but
Oh,
Marty
yeah,
does in part three. And then we get to this scene, right? With the doc
with
with
the
the helmet.
helmet, yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
sweet.
Yeah, that's one of those pops that's just you got when you see it. And that's another thing. When I was a kid, I looked up and down for Back to the they had no Back to the Future stuff.
Yeah, I
Like
never had any
not
Back to the Future toys or anything.
yeah, like 90, 92, 95, nothing. But now within the last, 7 or 8 years, with all the anniversaries, I got to buy this for the kid inside that never got any Back to the Future toys. I
Well, the
remember
market is
I
for people our age because it's
yeah,
collectors. I mean,
right,
they're not marketing this stuff for kids. They're marketing it for us because they know
right.
we're the ones with the money, and two,
Ah,
we're the ones that grew up with it. Yeah.
right. That's a good point. That's a good point. Um, so from there, like you said, we go to Doc's mansion, which doesn't exist in the 80s, but it exists in the 50s because it
Right.
hasn't been destroyed yet. And um, Doc has the helmet on. Marty knocks on the door. Don't tell me anything. He puts a suction cup on his head, trying to read his mind. And um, Marty says, well, I came in a time machine that you invented. And Doc's like, you know what that means? That
This
means that
damn thing
this,
doesn't work. Yeah. So he starts
every
telling him
freaking
about
line
the
is
time
quotable.
machine, and he's like, "I never invented a
Hmm.
time machine." And he's like, "Tell me, future boy, who's the president of the United States in 1985?" That's the whole Ronald Reagan. The actor? Huh, who's
Yeah,
vice president? Jerry Lewis?
that's great. And just some light, because I've seen some of their behind the scenes stuff too. They said that Ronald Reagan, loved that line so much he asked the theater to play it back.
Right, he had him rewind, so
Yeah,
that was back whenever they did film reel to reels at the movie theater.
yeah.
So they said he
It
had to
went
stop
digital.
and back it all up and play it again for him, yeah.
That's pretty cool that he got the joke, you know. Just politics aside, just the idea that an actor that can become president is
Mhm.
mind-boggling. You know, that's cool. Um, so then we get to
But it made it easy for the movie for him to doubt him, like, "Oh, you're just saying that, you crazy person, because he's an actor," you know?
yeah,
So it works
yeah,
out in that way where he's like, "Yeah,
you're right. It
whatever."
works on a different level because it
Mhm.
it ruins his credibility. It'd be
Right.
like saying, I don't know, like Bradley Cooper is president or something. You'd be
Correct,
like,
or Ryan Reynolds. "Oh, really?
yeah,
Ryan Reynolds is president?" You know?
yeah, that's cool. Um, so then
Well, he convinces
is
him by
that
saying, "I know how you got the bump on your head," and he says, "You were
right?
fixing a light bulb, you slipped on the toilet and fell, bumped your head, and that's where you came up with the flux capacitor, which makes time
Uh-huh.
travel possible." And then, of
I
course,
love
Christopher
that bit.
Lloyd opens the door and just looks at him with his big eyes. I mean,
Okay, so him opening the door like with his big eyes, then the subtle music, and then them going behind they go back to
the
the
door.
neighborhood, you know, behind the sign. That all that eeriness there, I love all that. Like
Yep.
I like how they take their time and take a moment. Um,
And he says,
so
"It
then
works." And he's like, "Bet your ass it works."
yeah, because he shows him the flux capacitor in the machine and the circuits are going and they bring it back, right? And he plays Doc the video from earlier in the movie where they were at the mall because he
Oh, yeah.
filmed it.
And
Oh,
of
and by the way, we
course,
didn't talk about it, but the fire trails, very Back to the Future, very iconic.
mhm,
The trails. So they're all like, okay. He's like, they're watching it. And then as soon as Doc hears 1.21 gigawatts, 1.21 gigawatts,
the funniest
he
part
starts,
about that is he runs away. Like, he just runs away. It's like, where are you going? You know?
because it's his house.
It's just funny to me that he got so freaked out, "I'm just gonna run."
Right. And he goes, I'm sure in your time you could get it at any local drugstore
Oh,
or
plutonium,
something
yeah.
like that.
It's available at
Yeah.
every corner drugstore, but
Yeah,
here, it's a little hard to come by. Yeah.
right. And then great. I love this because then he goes, the only thing that can harness enough to get you home, enough 1.21 gigawatts is a bolt of lightning. But
Mhm.
unfortunately, you're never going to know when or where one is going to strike. And Marty shows him the flyer with what his girlfriend said. He's like, look, I got, a
He
life
says,
in
"Now we
85.
do." He says, "Now we do."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he flips it. Now we do. And that was cool because, that ties it back to the beginning of the movie, taking a flyer from the lady that you thought was nothing. And that's how he's going to get home. Is they're going to channel that lightning into the flux capacitor somehow.
Yep. Everything is
And,
very, very convenient and easy
but
to
it
get
doesn't
done.
bother me.
No,
It
no, no, it
doesn't bother me
doesn't
though, because it's
it
all
doesn't bother
seated
me.
in.
Right.
You know what I
They did
mean?
a good
It's
job with making it make sense.
right.
All that good stuff. How he went back exactly when he needed to go back
Uh-huh.
because he was putting the time circuits in there, just kind of showing Marty how it worked. And because he did that, it's the same time. He happened to invent time travel around the same time that
Right.
lightning struck the tower. So it all kind of works in, but it's very convenient, but I don't care.
Yeah, and the reason it doesn't I'd rather him get back home by something earlier in the movie, like the flyer, than just him figure out some random thing at the
Right.
end.
Something, yeah, 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 yeah. It
Yeah,
was definitely set up well. They did it's good writing. There's no doubt. It's good
right.
writing.
Yeah. Um, and then so 10:04 p.m. next Saturday night,
Yep.
we're gonna send you back to the future. That's another iconic
Well,
line that he
yeah.
says.
And right after he says the line, he points to the camera, breaks the third wall, fourth wall, whatever they say. But
Hmm.
right after that is whenever Marty says, "Oh yeah, I can hang out for a week," and he's like, "Well, no, you can't do that." And he's like, "Oh, okay." He's like, "Have you met with anybody?" He's like, "I sort of bumped into my parents." And it's brilliant how they use the picture thing. Even though it doesn't make a whole lot of
Yeah.
sense, it kinda gives you a countdown. It gives them
Right.
you know what I'm saying? And it kinda gives some weight to how important it is that they get this done because it could unravel time. It could totally
Right.
destroy everything if they don't fix it.
Right. And you need, so the picture thing is cool too, like you're saying, because you need a ticking time bomb. Otherwise, there's no urgency,
Right. It gives
you
you
know?
something you can, that it's easy to understand. Oh, they're slowly fading away.
Right. And then, and when Marty first shows him the photograph, he goes, "Huh, that's a cheap photograph. They cut your brother's head off."
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But it's because he's starting to fade. And then he looks at the photo again, and the brother's head's completely gone. And then he goes, "It's like he was erased from
From
existence."
existence. Yep.
Yeah. Um, so from there,
That's when they decide, okay, we
oh, they
gotta we
go,
gotta figure some we gotta make sure my parents get back together so they arrive at the school.
and I love when they walk up on the school because Michael J. Fox goes, "Whoa, they really cleaned this place up." But it's
Like,
because
no,
he's
y'all
seeing
have
it when it
trashed
was,
the place. Yeah.
yeah, because they're seeing it when it was new. But to Marty, it's like they cleaned it up because he was just there earlier,
Mm. So
in
he
the
gets to
80s.
see how, everybody picks on his dad and and then he tries to or he sees Strickland as a young man. He's like, "Wow, didn't that guy ever
Mhm.
have hair?" And he looks exactly the same.
Right. He's got a
Um,
little more on the sides, but yeah,
mhm.
he's bald still.
So he tries again to introduce his dad to his mom, but she's so
Mhm.
infatuated with him, she doesn't even pay attention to George. And it's like, "You mean to tell me my mom's got the hots for me?" Yeah.
Yeah, and then he's like, "This is heavy," and then Doc's like, it's
There's that
almost
word again,
like Doc.
heavy.
It's almost like he's on the spectrum because he's like,
Oh,
"Is there
yeah.
something wrong with the Earth's gravitational pull?"
Like, he stops what he's saying to say that, then he goes right back to saying
Right.
what he's saying.
It's like he doesn't get sarcasm. It's funny. Um, and so George had, like you said, he has the classic "kick me" sign, all that stuff. Um,
He's
and the
like,
mom
"Which
has the
one's your
hots
pop?
for him.
Which one's your pop?" "That's him."
Yeah, maybe you were adopted.
Yeah. That's funny.
And then I think we go to the lunchroom after that, right?
Yep, they go to the lunchroom, and then,
Yeah.
him and Biff are about to fight. He realizes exactly how big he is. He stands up, and
Yes,
he's just
and
like
yeah, and that's a beat they repeat later
yeah.
in other movies. But right before that, when he's sitting at the lunch table with George, and George is writing all those science fiction stories, Marty's like, "Get out! I never know you did anything
Anything
creative.
creative?
And if you just met the guy, that wouldn't be a big deal. But that's his dad.
That's his
Like
dad. He's
he's
learning something
learning
about
stuff
his
about
dad.
his dad. Yeah, and
Mhm.
he's getting to hang out with his dad, and his dad doesn't know it. Like there's something about that never gets old. I like that.
Yep. It's a good little bit.
Hmm.
So, he breaks it up, whatever. They decide they need him to meet at the dance because that's where they fall in love. And what does Doc calls it? He calls it a rhythmic ceremonial ritual or something like that. Yes,
I
a
forgot about,
dance.
yes,
A dance.
right.
He's like, that's
Yeah,
where they
because
meet.
he's
That's where they fall in love and kiss for the first time. So now they have their plan.
uh
They have to get them to go to the dance together and fall in love. So even though here comes the time travel thing, everything happens so differently that would everything, be the same?
well, there
It's
is
not going
ripples
to.
later when we get
Right.
to
There's
it. There
ripples
is
later,
ripples.
but
Yeah.
if those ripples don't happen, if let's just say best case scenario, they just get them back together and they fall in love,
Uh-huh.
things would still be different.
Yeah.
It just would still be different.
Yeah. And I want to chat a little more about that when we get there, but um let's see. And Biff says make like a tree and get out of here,
I say that all the
which
time.
that's hilarious because obviously make like a tree and leave because leaves are on a tree, but he never says it right. He just says get out of here.
Right.
Um and uh Marty tells his dad, "You got to ask Lorraine out," but he goes, "I'll miss my favorite science fiction theater." So then Marty's like, "Okay." He's
Well, he
stuck
says,
on that.
"Not
I'm gonna,
you or not anyone else from this planet is gonna change my mind." So then it's like, "Okay,
yeah, yeah, that was
I'll
smart.
I'll come in with Van Halen and say I'm Darth Vader from planet Vulcan."
Yeah, so he pleased everybody. He Van Halen, you got Darth Vader, and you have Vulcan from Star Trek. You got everybody covered.
Covered the bases.
Um, yeah, that little beat is funny, right? Because he has the headphones on him. He basically scares him, says he's going to melt his brain if he doesn't take, which sounds so weird saying it, but it works in the movie.
Yeah. My name is Darth Vader.
Yes, that was great. That was great. Um, Especially since what this came out 5 years after Empire or 4 years.
Oh yeah, Star
So
Wars had been a thing.
right.
Actually, yo,
Um,
speaking of which, this is being filmed on May 25th, which is the 45th anniversary of A New Hope releasing today.
oh, that's all. I saw you text something like that today. That's cool.
Yep.
So wow, it's crazy that it's been that long.
25 years.
Yeah, there you go. 45 years. Um, so
So he
then
tries to get so George is scared out of his mind, so he runs to Marty and
mhm,
says that Darth Vader from Planet Vulcan said, "I have to ask her to the prom, or he's gonna melt my brain, or to the
mhm,
dance."
right.
So they go into the diner, and he attempts, and then here we go. In walk. Actually, before that, he's like, "I don't know what to say,"
Iconic
and he's
line.
he starts telling them, and he's like, "Jesus Christ! It's a wonder I was even born."
Because his
Like,
dad is so bad at
mhm.
talking to people. And that's when he said, you're you're my density,
Yeah, my
right?
density. Yeah,
And he goes, and she's like, what? And he goes, I mean my destiny. And
my
he finally
destiny.
says it right, but Biff ruins it.
Mhm.
Um, and Biff, Biff interrupts it, and Marty trips Biff, right?
Yes,
'Cause- yeah,
he trips him because, no, he punches him. He punches
okay,
Biff. He's like, "Hey, who's that?" Or whatever, and he punches him, and then he runs.
right.
Um, then the chase ensues, just like there's always a chase.
Uh-huh.
Um, an appropriately length an appropriate length chase, not a Indiana
Right.
Jones 37-minute chase, okay?
And I love this whole skateboard chase you're talking about. So Marty steals a skateboard from a kid, and Biff is chasing him in it's a Ford, right? Is it a Ford?
Yes, he's driving a '47 Ford.
Yes. Um, and he's chasing him around, and the music, that's something we haven't talked about yet. The music is great.
Mhm.
Um, I love the music.
It's Roll
And
With
it's
Me
not
Henry is playing at in the diner.
right. And then you also have the classical music playing too,
Mhm.
like uh, um, the I forget how it goes now, but it's like bum, bum, ba-na-na,
Oh, yeah,
that
yeah, yeah, uh-huh.
iconic music, and chasing him around. Marty's running into people, but my favorite beat is obviously he faces him right, and then he's going towards him, and Marty jumps into the car over all the jocks, lands back on the skateboard, and they crash into the manure truck. That's
Yeah, yeah.
perfect. Yeah,
And of course, Lorraine is, like, even more
even more in
infatuated.
love.
Isn't he a dreamboat? Because he's this stud. But, oh, one of okay, so, of course, Billy Zane is one of, Biff's henchmen. Casey
Yes.
Sizemasco is the other one. He's from Young Guns.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
he's the short one with the, kinda curly hair and the beard. And,
Okay.
the other guy, I can't remember his name. He was just at the St. Tammany Collectors Convention that I went to, a couple months ago. He was at the one that says, "Dork here thinks he's gonna drown." He was actually I could have met him.
Yeah,
I did talk to him. I told him hi, but,
that's cool.
I didn't I didn't have the cash to go splurging for an autograph and a picture with him.
Right.
But
That's cool
that's
though.
the henchman.
That's funny too that like and again, those small parts still memorable and
Mhm.
they're little. And Billy Zane, everybody knows him from Titanic. Uh and he was also in The Phantom back in the day.
Right.
It was like a superhero type movie. But cool. So then we go from there to what?
Well,
Um,
after the whole chase and everything, the next scene
mhm,
is Marty gets back to Doc's place, and Doc is watching the video where he's obviously seeing that he gets killed. He
right.
sees that he gets killed, and he gets all flustered and all that good stuff. Um,
And then we get the model scene,
well, we get the model
right?
scene. Yeah, he changes the subject, gets the model scene, and it's always funny because he's like, "Excuse the crudity of this model," and he's like, "It's okay, Doc." You know.
Yeah, it's not just like all the buildings aren't to scale, but like
Right, but it's like
he
a great model. It's like, how the hell did he do that? Yeah.
yeah. And in reality, like it's not really needed. Like you could have cut that out, but it adds to his character how eccentric he is.
Yeah. And they wanted a visual aid, so they
Right.
they show it. And his face whenever the little car goes off and
Yes,
catches fire, he goes, "Ah!"
that's funny with the goggles too. Like, um, that I jotted that down too. That's one of the scenes that stick out too. That's
Mhm.
another one that just feels like that was his reaction,
Yeah.
you know,
So
because
then
the car catches on fire and then it runs into those oily rags and then his trash can. Yeah, that's a great bit.
so the next thing is Lorraine knocks on the door and she
Quick,
asks
cover the
Marty,
DeLorean.
yeah,
Yeah,
they cover the DeLorean and she asks him to the dance and he's all uncomfortable. I think a man should be strong, don't you? Yeah. Yeah.
so awkward.
It's so gross.
It's
Yeah.
so and on top of it being his mom, like Doc is right there. Like, and it's so
Yeah.
uncomfortable, man.
He walks behind her and he just gives the big eye. He's like,
Yeah, that was great. Yeah, and Lorraine, Emma Thompson, right?
yeah, Leah Thompson.
Leah Thompson, sorry, she does a great job as well.
Oh yeah,
You
everybody's
know,
great.
yeah, she sells it. Um, Very good.
Which
And
begs the question, why the
uh,
next year did she do Howard the Duck?
I still don't understand that movie. Like,
Like, this is not a joke. I started watching it last night because it's on HBO Max. So I
oh,
put
it
it
is.
on. I watched about now look, I used to watch this when I was a kid and my brother and I liked it. Oh my
Uh,
God. It is so bad. It's so
it's yeah,
bad. But I do wanna finish it because I gotta get further into it. I have to it's like a train wreck. I have to watch it. But
yeah.
it's pretty bad. I don't know what George Lucas was thinking with that. I mean, that was
It's- yeah, I don't get that. That's I can't. Like I said, I can defend a lot of Lucas. That's one of the ones I'm like, I don't get it. Like,
yeah.
I don't get it.
I don't know, man.
Now but it is funny when he shows up as a background character in some of the Marvel movies. That's kind of funny.
Yeah.
You know, he's just in the background, but Howard the Duck, that is. But anyway, um,
So then he goes
uh,
and so now he's gotta make a plan with George because now he's taking his mom to the dance. So he's gotta tell George, "Look, this is the
mm-hmm,
plan, she's gonna get very upset with me, and you're gonna come in" because now he knows that his mom wants to see somebody tough, somebody who's can,
right.
defend her honor. So now he's gotta make his mom uncomfortable so
Uh huh.
his dad could come to the rescue.
So you're gonna touch her on her
He's like, "No, no, no.
yeah. And then he's like, "Come on, Dad." And it slips. I
Daddy-o."
love that, Daddy. Oh yeah, I love that because you would slip if you were talking to your dad at the,
He's like, "Do you think
Um,
I should swear?" "Yes, gosh darn it, swear."
yes, he's so worried about swearing, and I'm like,
And he swears telling him to swear.
yeah, yes, you're right.
It's not, you and I are both good Christian boys, so
Uh-huh.
we don't like to say the GD, but,
Right.
he says it like, "Yes, swear." Mhm.
Right. So then we go to
Well, now they're at the
Marty writing
dance.
the letter.
Oh,
Well,
yeah, that's right, he
yeah,
stops to write the letter before the
he
dance, yeah.
stops to write the letter. Obviously, the letter is something that he wants Doc to read. So when this Doc gets to the 80s, he doesn't make the mistake of getting shot by the terrorist group.
Right. That's
Um,
why he says don't open until 1985 because if he tells him
right,
too much about his own future, he'll Doc may change things and then it'll just mess everything up. So
right.
Doc can't know until right before the
Un-
incident.
until right before, yeah. Um, and this goes into a scene that I did not catch when I was a kid. Like Doc is working on the light post, like rigging everything up,
Oh yeah,
you know,
uh-huh.
and the cop goes, "You got a permit for that?" And he goes, "Of course I got a permit." And he's opening his wallet to give him money, so he's basically paying the cop off. But I think that's something you don't catch when you're 6 years old.
Yeah,
You
he's
catch
like,
that
"Of
later.
course I have a permit," and he opens up his
Yeah,
wallet, baby.
and so that's cool. That's something that you don't appreciate till later. Um, and then Marty, oh, while Doc is doing that, Marty hides the letter
Right, in his,
in his
coat
jacket,
pocket, yeah.
in his coat pocket. Yeah. Um, and then we cut to the dance, the music, and then George kind of just doing
His
his little
dancing,
dance.
yeah. Look, man, Crispin Glover, the guy is famous in the horror community because he is in, Friday the 13th Part 4,
Mm-hmm.
the final chapter, and he has a dance scene, and it is awesome. So, like, Crispin
Really?
Glover, yeah, it's and I say awesome sarcastically. It is very terrible, but it's awesome. If I c
That's funny.
if I'm any good at editing a video, I'm gonna put a little clip of it in here. Um,
That's hilarious.
yeah,
I see. That's
you
all
need to
new to
look
me
it
because
up.
I'm not. Yeah,
We're
that's
gonna do some horror stuff. You're gonna have to, put your big pants on, your big boy pants on, and you're gonna have to watch some horror movies because I love horror
okay.
movies.
Well, I've seen some, but I'm obviously nowhere near as vast as you are. But that would be cool because you're seasoned in it, and you could show me something I've never seen before and
Sure.
get my reaction.
Yeah,
So you get
absolutely.
like an old take and a fresh take.
Yep.
Um,
So anyway, so after they show Crispin Glover dancing, Marty
mhm.
arrives with Lorraine and they park the car. And
Right.
Lorraine pulls out um the alcohol and he's like, "What are you doing?" She's like, "What? Everybody does it, you know?" And
Yeah, anybody who's anybody drinks.
yeah. And of course she becomes an alcoholic. And then so
Yes,
he takes
yeah,
a
because he
drink.
said,
Oh, I'm sorry,
and
go
he
ahead.
tells her you might regret it later in life.
Right.
And
It's
then
She pulls out a cigarette and he goes, "You smoke too?" And she's
that
like,
was
"You're
great.
starting to sound like my mother." And he just looks at her. Yeah, it's a good scene.
But as a kid, like you're like, gosh, I mean, what are you gonna do next? Like you're doing everything you tell me not to do,
Yep.
and you're
And
seasoned at it.
we all become our parents, man. I mean, I'm becoming my parents. I'm sure you feel like you're your
Yeah,
parents. I mean, that's just how it is.
yeah, I know. It's funny how that happens.
Now here comes, the gross part, I guess.
Uh huh.
And that's whenever she just leans in and what does she say? If you want something, you just go for it or something to that effect.
Right.
And she
And
leans over and kisses him, and his face of sheer terror is just like,
yeah, he has like this. He didn't. Yeah, he didn't enjoy it as much as Luke did. As much as I
yeah,
love
no,
Star
no, no.
Wars,
Freaking
I,
George
I I would
Lucas,
probably have
man.
more of Michael J. Fox's reaction.
Yeah, his reaction is great. And she's like, when I kiss you, it's like kissing my brother. Does that
Uh
make
huh.
she's like, if that makes any sense, he's like, oh, trust me, it makes perfect sense.
Right, because he knows, as we know, that it doesn't mesh at all. Um, and then that's when Biff shows up, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Biff shows up, pulls him out the car. He's like, you cost $300 damage to my car, you son of a bitch. And
Which shows the 50s, right? Because
right, three hundred
if you're
dollars. Jeez.
that your car gets totaled and it's only $300.
My deductible is more than that, you know?
Yeah, so that's showing 50s. Today that'd be easily 10 grand.
Yep.
Okay, so
So they beat
300
him
bucks
up and all
damage.
that good stuff,
Hmm.
and he says, "Get out of here! This ain't no peep show." Then of
I
course
love that line.
Biff decides, and this, that's why this movie probably should be PG-13, you know, because this is one of the things where, I mean, you got a whole sexual assault going on. You know, he's forcing a girl to
You're
do
right.
something that she doesn't wanna do. So, you know, I
Uh-huh.
mean, I get they needed something for George to defend her honor, but this is where
Yeah.
it's, you know, probably should have been PG-13 at this point
Y
because,
yeah.
you know, trying to explain that to a 9 or a 10-year-old, you know,
That's a good point.
whatever.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah, George
So
and the
then
funny part is George opens the door and he's like, "Take your damn," and when he sees it's Biff, he goes, "Oh," like, oh, crap."
yes, because the plan got sabotaged because it's supposed to be Marty,
Supposed to be
and
Marty.
now it's Biff. So it's his worst enemy now, and he
Yeah.
grabs
Well,
George's arm.
it got real, you
Yeah,
know?
it got real.
Well, before he grabs his arm and everything, she says, "George, help me," with it. He realizes, okay, and he says, "No, Biff, you leave her alone." So he's starting to
Yeah,
kind of, you know,
stand
to
up.
nut up, right. He's
Yeah,
doing the right thing. He knows he's gotta help her. Um, so that's whenever Biff gets out. He tries to punch him with a little weak punch, and Biff grabs his arm, and
that's
Biff is
right. He tries to
yeah,
punch him and he grabs his arm. Yeah. Um, and I love how that's shot because you hear the laughing and the way his arm is like you know, you feel that hurt, and then you see his fist slowly and slowly get tighter, and then he clocks him
yep. He decks
and
him.
decks him. Yeah, he
My old
decks
man's
him.
about to deck Biff.
Yeah. Oh, that. Yeah, that's in the second one,
It's
right?
in the
When he
second
says
one,
that.
yeah. Mhm.
Um. So let's see.
So he knocks out Biff, and then
Mm-hmm.
he's like, "Are you okay?" And so all of a sudden she's like, "My hero," you know? So it's
Uh huh.
yeah.
The way
But
that's that.
it's still not quite right yet because, oh, in the we forgot, in the meantime, his boys had locked him in the trunk of the band member's car,
Uh huh.
and, they're like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Hey, beat it, spook. This don't concern you." It's like, "Oh." Then those guys get out the car,
Yeah.
and he's like, "Who you calling Spook Peckerwood?"
That's great. Yes.
I mean,
And then he goes, I don't want to get beat by some reefer addicts.
yeah, some reefer
Like
addicts,
I didn't
okay?
I didn't catch that when I was a kid, like what they were implying there.
Well, I didn't understand spook. Like, I didn't get the racial slur when I was a kid,
Right.
you know? But now, as an adult, you get it, and it's like, "Ooh, that's not," but
Yeah.
it was indicative of the time, you know? They were trying to show it was the '50s, and that's how,
Uh-huh.
you know, they were treated. But, they were like, "Get
Right.
out of here. Go home to your mama, boy."
Yeah. I love that. I love that.
But
And
then
then
they
you learn
sliced
that
their hand
ah,
because the keys were in there, so he slices his hand. And after everything happens, that's why Marty has to play guitar for, um, the guitarist because he sliced his hand. So that's how
right.
Marty ends up on
So
stage.
I didn't realize this till just now. See, this movie, you continuously,
Yeah, he was
more
like,
you
"Look,
talking,
they have to dance, and if you can't play, then they won't kiss. If they don't kiss, then I'm history." And he's like, "Well, unless you have
yeah,
somebody who can play the guitar, we're finished." And in the next scene, you see Marty sitting there playing with him.
yeah, but
Because
follow me here. Like I just caught this just now. So in this movie, um, you know, Marty messes things up, right? And then he fixes it. Then Biff messes it up by locking him in the car, slice the musician gets his hand sliced, Marty has to play. So Biff messed it up second, right?
right?
In the Back to the Future 2, Marty messes it up by buying the almanac, then Biff messes it up even more. It's like they
Right.
did the same thing again. That you know, because Marty fixed it and then Biff messed it up. So, like you
You're
said, he
right.
has to play.
It's the same
Yeah.
movie, they're all crap. No, I'm joking.
No, I didn't catch that parallel till
No,
just
no,
now.
I
That's
was just
cool.
making a joke.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
so that's why he had to play because
Mm-hmm.
even though they were together, if the band didn't play, then if the dance was over,
It didn't
then
seal it.
it didn't seal it. They wouldn't kiss and everything. So he had to make sure that they had their first kiss on the dance floor to set everything
Mm-hmm.
right. So that all
Right.
that happens. That what's his name? The redhead guy from Children of the Corn.
Oh, when he grabs
Yeah,
Lorraine.
he starts dancing, and then Crispin Glover ends up pushing him down, and they kiss.
Right.
So then because Marty was starting to fade, so he comes up,
Yes.
finishes, and then they're like, "Let's play something that really cooks." And then
I love that.
that's when we get Johnny Be Good, you know? So Marty McFly invented Johnny Be Good because your cousin Marvin Berry,
Yeah.
it was Chuck Berry's cousin. So, yeah.
So the musician at the dance is Marvin Berry. He calls his cousin Chuck Berry. In history, Chuck Berry really wrote the Johnny Be Good. So right, so it's a cool paradox. Like he learned it from Marty,
And if
but
you think
Marty
about
learned
it,
it from him.
with this being Robert Zemeckis, it kinda makes it kinda like Forrest Gump. Like, Forrest Gump basically did everything, like,
Right.
he invented just, Apple, and he just,
And like Elvis got the idea to move from
Elvis
watching
got the idea
Forrest.
from
Yeah,
him, yeah, all that stuff.
yeah. So that's cool. That's you could tell that's the same writing there.
Yeah.
Um, and Michael J. Fox, like he spent a lot of time playing the guitar,
Yes.
and they talk about how he does like the Clapton thing, he
Mhm.
does the Jimi Hendrix thing.
Yeah, he
He
wanted to
references a
look
lot of
convincing.
musicians.
He didn't really play the
Hmm.
guitar in all those scenes, but he's doing the
He had the
motions
movements.
right, he had the movements good
Yeah,
enough to look convincing. Um,
right.
I think they said he tried to sing, and it just didn't. They were like, "No, just gonna get somebody who can
Oh,
sing."
well,
Um,
they did a good job because it doesn't feel like it fits. It doesn't seem like real out of wits
so and then you get the
at all.
whole, "I guess you guys aren't ready for that yet, but your kids are gonna
Hmm.
love it."
Right, because he loves it. So that
Right.
was cool.
That was
He's the
the
only one
generation.
that got the joke.
Right, because 'cause they're all just looking at him like and then
I
Marty, that
like
was
that.
very interesting music.
When they're talking out at the yeah, when they're
Yep.
talking, and then he says the thing like, if your son ever lights fire to the living room rug,
Go
go
easy
easy
on
on him.
him. Mhm. And then she says, "Marty." I like that name.
Right,
So he
that's
named
cool.
himself too, I guess. But
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
you would think they would name his older brother Marty, but whatever.
Oh, because he came first. Yeah,
Oh, there's a second
but
plot point.
yeah, but that's just a name thing. The name thing here is better than some of the other stuff we've looked at before. Um, and then you get Doc looking at his.
Damn.
And he
Damn,
keeps
damn.
saying it, and then Marty pulls up, and Doc says, uh,
Have you no
"Good
concept
luck."
of time?
I love that because this whole movie is about time.
Yeah.
And then his excuse is, "I had to change."
Yeah, I'm not gonna go back in that zoot suit. Really? Your whole life may depend on this and you worried about a suit? But whatever.
Right. So that was funny.
So of course you
And
get the classic, well, the storm is coming, all this good
yeah.
stuff, and then he finds the letter and he's like, "I will not be responsible for this." He tears it up, all that good stuff, and he's
Okay,
like,
but
"Your
before
life
you go
depends
there,
on it."
yes. And Doc gets mad at him, like you said, and rips it. But right before that, one of my favorite moments, and I only realized it probably 10 years ago, not when I was a kid, when when Marty's saying I had to change clothes and all that, and it's storming, you can't really hear them that well, and Marty goes, he tells Doc, I jotted it down. He tells Doc, he laid out Biff in one punch. I didn't know he had it in him.
Oh,
He's never
yeah.
stood up to Biff in his life. And then Doc's face goes, never?
Never?
And then he goes, like,
Never mind.
you
You
probably
probably
just
messed
screwed
everything up, right.
you probably messed everything up, but we have no time.
Right.
So just
It's
go.
it's crunch time now. Yep,
I
you're
love that
right.
because
That is
his Doc's face, he's like, oh crap,
never?
but we don't have time. I love that. So then he rips up the letter. That's what you were.
Yeah, he rips up the
Um,
letter, all the good stuff. The storm comes, knocks over a branch,
mhm.
and then great Scott, so now he's gotta go up, try to hook the power back up and all that good stuff.
Which is weird though, because if they wouldn't have been arguing, Marty wouldn't have been there when the tree messed up the thing.
Mhm. You're
So
right.
then Doc would have. So thank God they were arguing, because otherwise Doc would have had to try to fix that by himself and may have missed the whole thing.
Hollywood magic, man. It's just everything works out. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It all works out.
But like I say, you overlook a couple of mistakes if the movie's golden, and this one's
Yeah,
golden.
I mean, look,
Um, yeah.
whatever. You have to
So
have a suspension of disbelief for movies, you know?
right.
So,
And like and some of these plot holes we're calling out, I, we, for myself, I didn't catch these till years later.
yeah.
You know, you
And
don't
look, and
notice it at first.
they're nothing that's like ground, like it's nothing that's gonna break the movie, you know? It's not like a,
Right.
I don't want
It's
to
all
say any,
little stuff.
I'm not gonna say any names, but Star Wars, you know, it's not like Star Wars plot holes where it's gaping plot holes and just don't worry about that. We'll just pretend that didn't happen, you know.
From a certain point of view.
Yeah, no, no.
Okay, so Doc has to climb up the clock tower
Gets it
and
done.
gets it done. Marty, he hands the cable down. Marty, no, he hands the rope down. Marty attaches the cable to
Right.
it. He pulls it up. You get the iconic thing with him sliding down, just like that clock at the beginning of the movie. Um, and then Marty is taken off to the car, sets it up, right? And everything's good to go. The car won't start.
Yeah. That and then but Marty also said, "I got plenty of time. I'll just go back 15 minutes
Yeah.
prior." But the problem is, so once he gets through, yeah, of course, he gets the car started, all that good stuff, hits it with his head. He goes,
Uh huh.
"Ah!" And he goes, but when he gets back in time, when he gets back to 1985,
Uh
damn
huh.
car won't start again.
You're right. And he has to leave it in the street.
So now he's got to run. So
Uh
15
huh.
minutes wasn't enough time. So he gets to the Lone Pine Mall.
Okay, that's one of those things that I didn't catch till I was probably in high school.
Of course.
How the because they don't say anything.
Right. You just
It's
see
a
the sign real quick.
yeah, and it says Lone Pine Mall because he ran over one of the pines.
You
That that
space
that
bastard.
is
You killed my
see,
pine.
but little details like that, like that makes the movie rewatchable, makes you overlook the little stuff because that little attention to detail is great. So
Well, it just makes
okay,
you
so he rolls down
appreciate
the
the how good it is, you know.
right, like it's not rushed.
So he gets there and he's just like a minute too late. He sees Doc get shot, and then he watches the Libyans chase him, and he goes and he disappears. So when he goes and
Hmm.
approaches Doc, he's crying and all that good stuff. But then Doc gets up and ta-da! Bulletproof vest. You
Uh
know,
huh.
another plot hole because that bulletproof vest would not stop an AK-47 308 round.
Oh
Or
wow.
excuse
See,
me, 7.62. It's a 7.62 round. That would go through a regular bulletproof vest like butter, you know.
oh okay.
Yeah, you need um plates. You need to have plated armor to stop that.
I
So
gotcha. So that
yeah.
would just stop like a 9 or something.
Yeah, a regular bulletproof vest is for small arms fire, like your pistols and stuff like that. But
Uh huh.
rifle ammo goes right through that like it's nothing. You know,
Wow,
it flies, it's too hot, you know, it goes too fast and yeah.
that's interesting. So plated would have worked.
Plated would have worked. Yep. He'd have needed a
Okay.
you know how you see SWAT teams where they put on the vest
Mm-hmm.
over? That's because it's a plated vest that they throw over and they'll stop up to a 308 round or which is like a 7.62 round. Yep.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Well, cool.
Mhm.
So, okay, he
But
needed a plated vest.
anyway, that's Hollywood. Bulletproof vest stops everything, you know.
but then you realize that Doc taped up the letter, so
And
he knew
said,
about it.
so I figured what the hell, he said.
Yeah. So I like that because then he's letting go of a little bit of his, um, you know, bias, I guess you could say. Like, so then we cut to
He drops
Marty
Marty off
going
home. He
right,
drops him off at
and
his
then
house.
now he's going to go on his own adventure.
He's gonna go
Doc
because
will.
he had it explained earlier. He was gonna go 25 years. He was gonna know who foreshadowing who's gonna win the next 25 World Series and all that good
Right.
stuff. So
That's cool.
Doc leaves after he drops him off, and Marty realizes that, well, when he wakes up in the morning, he realizes that
Yeah.
everything has changed, and he's like, "What the hell is
Uh-huh.
this?"
For the better.
Yeah, everything's changed for the better. Even though they probably wouldn't be living in the same house and all that good stuff, but it works,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, and okay, so then he sees his brother and he goes, "What are you wearing?" He goes, "I always wear a suit to the office."
Yeah, yeah.
So his brother doesn't work at McDonald's. He works at a respectable office building. Um, his mom's not an alcoholic.
His dad is a
Dad,
success.
dad is a success. He wrote his first book,
Yeah.
and I mean the
What's the name
cover
of the
has
book? I don't remember. I
oh,
should have
it's like
wrote
a
it down.
match. Is it a match made in space or something like that?
Something like
Um,
that. It's definitely a space man movie.
right. And it's obviously about how this man from another planet brought him and Lorraine together, but that's his son. He doesn't know that. Um, and
Even though
and
he
the
looks
best part,
exactly he looks
yeah, that's
exactly like Calvin Klein.
that's right, because that's what they know him as. Now
Yeah.
that's one that like it's kind of like the Clark Kent with the glasses. You got to kind of let that one go. Um, but and then the best part is who's outside waxing the car.
Biff, baby. Now,
Yep.
Biff, that's 2 coats of wax. I know, I'm finishing up the 2nd coat right now, and he's like, "Now, Biff, don't con me."
Uh huh.
Okay, I mean, I was just starting the 2nd coat. Yeah, Biff, what
Is
a character.
so that's all the stuff that you know when he hit Biff, it set all this other stuff in motion. Now he's not the pushover anymore. If anything, Biff is on the lower hand. His son's successful. He's successful. So that's cool. I like that. How everything's better.
Right. So then goes outside, he sees his truck, because they're like, "What do you mean the car's wrecked?" All that good stuff, so
Oh, that's
anyway,
right. Because it's called
he's
a match
thinking,
made in space.
yeah, yeah, it's a match made in space, okay.
A match made in space. Yeah.
So anyway, long story short, he ends up outside, sees his truck, his
Hmm.
dream truck, and then his girlfriend comes in and, "How about a ride, mister?"
Yeah, and she say like, you look like you haven't seen me in a week.
"I haven't."
It, he hasn't, but in real time, she saw him the day before.
The day before,
So
right?
yeah, so that was cool. Um,
And
so right as
then,
he's about to kiss her,
bam, here comes Doc.
Doc comes back, yeah, and he crashes into the trash cans. He's wearing some kind of futuristic suit. He says, "I need fuel," and he takes the beer can, puts it into the Mister Fusion,
Right?
um, and
Which was, look, that was a genius idea because they didn't wanna have to work, "Okay, if we're gonna keep doing these movies, we don't have to
mhm,
keep obtaining plutonium.
right.
So, we gotta come up with something where, we don't have to worry about this anymore." Oh, he makes Mr. Fusion, it just takes trash and it does what he needs it to do.
Right. It's yeah, and you're right. It doesn't slow us down anymore. And something else they do. We could talk about this later. Is when the DeLorean comes back, they never cover it in that much ice again.
Right, it only happened. Yeah,
It still has some, but never to the extent they did in the beginning. Um,
correct.
but this whole little, I mean, to me, the real ending of this movie is seeing the dad being successful, seeing Marty with his girlfriend. The part where Doc shows up, and we'll get into this. It's really the beginning of part two,
Yeah,
because the
mhm,
first story's over now.
yep.
So the big reveal is Doc says it's your kids. Something's got to be done about your kids. So they get in and they go to take off. They go to drive off, but he says, "Where we're going, we don't need
He
roads.
says, "Doc, you don't have enough road to get up to 88
Road to
miles
get
an
up to
hour."
88." That's right.
Roads, and he flips down the glasses. "Where we're going, we don't need roads." And they put the "to be continued," and Robert Zemeckis said they didn't even know if they were gonna do a second one. It
Mm-hmm.
depended on if the movie was a hit or not. So they put "to
Right.
be continued," and it was like, whether or not it happened, it didn't matter. It just felt
Right.
like the right thing to do because they were, taken off.
Yeah, and he said it. Robert Zemeckis said it was almost kind of like a joke, like the end.
Right, right, right. Yeah, it's like,
Yeah,
yeah, we'll just go ahead and put that in there, and if we do another one, fine. But I don't think there was this expectation of doing more. It was just
right.
whatever.
Well, and this was the mid '80s, so franchises weren't what they are today.
Mhm.
So just because it was good didn't necessarily mean you were going to do a whole bunch of them.
And they
But
waited 4
obviously,
years. They waited 4 years
yeah, yeah, because '85
because
and '89, right?
'89 is when they filmed the other 2 together,
Yeah,
and they released 6 months apart or something like that.
that's cool. Yeah, so and then we can get into this in the second one, but you know, they kind of wrote themselves into a corner a little bit with how this ended because they had to fulfill them going to the future with the girlfriend. That's
Oh,
why they
yeah, yeah,
drugged
yeah.
her.
They had no choice but
Yeah,
to go that way, yeah.
yeah. So, but yeah, so that's the first movie. Um, Classic movie, right?
Oh, yeah,
Even
absolutely.
people, I've talked to people like even people that don't like sci-fi appreciate this movie.
Of
Like this is
course.
just one of those
Yeah.
movies, like kind of like Grease. Like I am not a huge musical guy, but I like Grease, right?
It's funny
That's
you say that. I love Grease, right? Because I grew up on it. My mom watched it all the time. So I love Grease. It's pretty much the only musical that I like. Um,
yeah.
Producer Nick hates it. He hates he hates Grease.
Well,
He doesn't like any musicals at all, but yeah, he hates Grease. Being a child of
I
the
go
'80s, he
well.
still hates it.
Well, I mean, but yeah, I mean, my dad and my sister used to watch it all the time, and my wife likes it. So, but you know what I mean? Like that's one of those movies. Like everyone's seen Back to the Future.
Mhm.
Not a majority of people, even if you don't like sci-fi. A lot of people have seen Grease, even if you don't like musicals. My point is that Back to the Future is one of those movies that are just part of the. It's just part of the culture.
It's universally
Yeah,
loved. I mean, I
yeah,
don't know if I've ever met anybody that says, "I don't like Back to the Future." I mean,
right.
I'm not saying there aren't people like that, but there's not many. Most
Yeah,
people have they may not have watched it as many times as you and I have, but they've seen it and say,
right.
"Oh yeah, Back to the Future is good." You know?
Or they may not have even seen the sequels as much, but they've seen the first one.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
So
okay, man.
classic
Well, we've
movie.
gone on long enough. Yeah, this was fun, but yeah, Back to the Future, great movie, and I can't wait to watch the second one, and then we're gonna have to do 3 videos, man. There's no way we're gonna get 2 and 3 in one video.
Yeah,
Not gonna happen.
yeah. We're gonna have to split it up, but if I have to do multiple videos, this is one of the ones to do it on.
Yep. All right, guys. Well, with that, we're gonna wrap it up. Please remember to like, subscribe, tell your friends, all that good stuff. And we're also available on podcasts. So anywhere you listen to your podcasts, you can find Average Home Theater Reviews. So if you're unable to watch, you can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Music, or excuse me, iTunes, right? iTunes, or no, it's Apple Podcasts is what it's
Mhm.
called. You know what I'm talking
Apple
about.
Podcast, Spotify. Yeah,
All that good stuff.
sounds
So
good.
anyway, we'll catch you guys on the next one. Later.